I thought I'd just give you a little bit of a context of how our webinar series started. Last year, when the first lockdown started in Melbourne, which is where we're located, we wanted to find a way to reach out to our audience around the world. And as you know, many of us had many webinars that were popping up all over the place, and we started a series called No Time to Waste, and that became very successful throughout the year. We then rebooted and tweaked it a bit and started the Unwrapped series, and the first one that we had at the very end of last year in December was with the new CEO for Veolia Australasia, Richard Kirkman. And he joined us for a very insightful discussion about his journey from global to local, discussing initiatives from overseas that are impacting recycling and soft plastic use. We're delighted to announce, we at that event, we actually were delighted to announce our partnership with Veolia, where we are actually delivering a number of education programs across Australia to schools and other community groups. So because Unwrapped was so successful, and unfortunately we would not have known we're in another lockdown, which we just heard the news this morning. For Melbournians, we're back to work tomorrow, which is really fantastic. So maybe that's why some of you were able to join us today, which is fantastic. So thank you if that's the case. Today, we hope you'll be inspired by another leader in the industry who will share with us his story of what he has done in the past few decades as an entrepreneur and an advocate for our environment. Today, we're looking to the future by continuing the important work that we do. And the discussion with John for our Unwrapped series, I think, will be a testament to that. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome John. John, would you like to share a little bit about yourself, please?
Thanks, Ricki. It's delightful to be here today. Happy Wednesday. For those that have your cameras on, can you please switch them off? That would just be perfect so that we can resume in a really good recording. A little bit of background. I started Planet Earth Cleaning Company about 27 years ago. And it was prior to that, I was helping a friend in a cleaning business who decided I'd be his partner. I found that I was very excited about an industry that had lots of opportunity. What I wasn't to know was that when one of our cleaners didn't show up, that I thought I'd put my hand up and do some cleaning. And so that was the moment of truth when I ended up cleaning in a toilet cubicle of all places. If only my friends could video me now doing that. But the point is, as I opened up the cleaning products, they were so toxic that the fumes were killing me, and my skin was starting to split and the stinging was unbearable. And I thought there's got to be a better way for these cleaners, and they need to be looked after. So I went to my partner to be and I said, Andrew, I think this is what we need to do, replace toxic with non-toxic. He wasn't interested. I told him why, and he still wasn't interested. So I went on and started an idea where I thought, hey, if I could build a business that would help the cleaners, that'd be terrific. And then suddenly it came to me, what if we could also help the planet? Because toxicity out of cleaning products run down our waterways and creates all sorts of havoc. So that's how the Planet Earth Cleaning Company was born. And today, lots of thinking goes on in terms of what we call green thinking. Back then, by the way, green was just a colour. So it's come a long way, hasn't it? So that's a little bit of background, apart from the fact that along the way, I created, I guess, or, together collaborating, EcoBins, a colour-coded bin system, which is seen all over the country in universities and schools and corporations and municipalities and so forth, which is how Ricki and I got talking. So thanks, Ricki.
Oh, thank you, John. You've got such a strong history, which is why I'm so, personally excited that we're having this conversation with you here today. Just focusing on Respond and Reboot, I wanted to start off today with a quote that you have actually on your LinkedIn profile. So I hope you don't mind me springing this on you.
Go for it.
So this is the quote. It's so easy to get swept up in our desire to take from people, to take from the planet. The more we accumulate, the more successful we tell ourselves we are. But there's got to be more than that kind of success. So my question to you is, Can you explain to our audience and to myself why now it's so important to reboot our habits to respond to the damaging effects plastic and other chemicals are having on the environment and reshaping what success actually might look like to you?
Okay, very good. I really like that because it feels for me like the more stuff people accumulate, the more they feel good about themselves, the larger the homes and so forth, and the kind of products they choose. But problem is thinking responsibly about our choices. And suddenly the stuff that we add in our lives actually becomes more a curse than making life greater. And I've often thought, we had this thing in the Western society of keeping up with the Joneses. Well, maybe it's time to say, go on with the Joneses and feel good about being, simple living and reducing the need to have things. I know that the less I have, I don't feel worse off. In fact, I feel better off. And I consider the consequences of things that I purchase. So I don't think it's success to have more stuff. I think there's success in making a difference, whatever that be. So, and that's usually the things we do, not the things we have.
So true, so true. I agree with you on that. And I guess, we talk a lot about being minimalists rather than maximising what we have and minimise what we have. And whenever people do a big clean out in their closets or in their home, they actually can really see how much stuff I think by nature, humans are very much hoarders. We tend to hoard a lot of things, which is not great. So that's a really, keeping that in mind, I guess that leads into my next question to you, which is, I guess, what differences are you finding that communities are now making in 2021 compared to what they were doing when you started 25 years ago with your earth cleaning company?
Isn't it interesting? So talk about the question of taking more resources is actually, from the previous question, kind of moves really nicely into this question, is that people are thinking about their needs and their wants. And with a bit of guidance, particularly with what we do, because I kind of find having a cleaning company like Planet Earth allows us to have huge influence on the people that work for the organisations, that they would actually, and the fact that they choose us to be the impact that they choose to be, because we really make a difference in terms of giving them ideas and thoughts, and they want to know. They don't always think. So, but they want to know. And I think that's the thing. If people are becoming more curious about being better, that's the change in a big way. And then from that, when you ask enough questions, somehow I think we come up with the answers. It's always been that I reckon if the desire is strong enough, we kind of find a way, don't we? If we want it enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that also is another. I was also curious about how did EcoBins actually start? Because you obviously started, Planet Earth 25 years ago, and then there's this other business, and I was really interested about the integration of those two. Could you share a little bit more about that with me?
Sure. Okay. Well, I think waste and cleaning are very well married, and so and when we found that clients wanted to recycle but weren't doing it particularly well, they put up signage, no one ever reads. Well, they might today be better at reading, but the fact is, when you have colour-coded bins, it helps people decide on which waste stream something goes to. So from going from I don't know what to do to suddenly they see colours, they then start to think. And even more profoundly, when you give morning tea talks to your clients. So Planet Earth actually came up with the idea, and then it became a business in itself. But what's great about what we do, I think, well, we should think we're great at what we do because we're trying to make a difference, is that the colour-coded bins do change waste habits. And so when we win a cleaning contract, that's part of the package. They actually get the bins for nothing. And we give morning tea talks on how and why we do what we do, because a lot of people don't even realise in landfill how much, methane is spewed out, which is something like 20 times, or no, even more, 21, 24 times, depending on the stats that you're reading, worse than carbon dioxide. And then you see an audience that glows because now they feel like they can be part of a change, which is huge, So, and which leads also into, when I was thinking about what Plastic Oceans does, you give education to organisations. imagine that as a lead on. And I mean, your EPIC program and so forth. Do you want to touch on that for a moment?
Well, it's interesting, John, because I actually wondered, do you happen to have a little sample there, perhaps to show our audience of your EcoBin?
Oh boy, I always carry one of these.
I thought you would, because you're in your office and it's like the elephant in the room, like that picture behind you, which I love. So, John, I love your office background. It's terrific. But yeah, so I think I love the story you told me about how that size bin was put on a very high-profile politician's desk, and that it was a way to remind them of, you know, how to minimise what they were doing with their waste. So one of the things I love about what you do with the EcoBins and the way you've designed them is that they're collapsible. So when they're delivered and they arrive at people's premises, not only are you reducing your greenhouse gas emissions by the fact that the transportation is reduced because you can get more on the actual load, that's, you know, the container or the truck or what's being delivered, but obviously there's less plastic wrapping. And obviously for us, we always talk about, you know, it's not just about the product. Unfortunately, it always comes wrapped in masses and masses of plastic, which then gets thrown away, which is in itself another topic, I realise. But yes, you know, we have our education programs, but which I'll maybe go to that a bit later. I wanted to just share with you, you know.
Sorry, did you say flat packed?
Yeah, flat packed. Fantastic. So, and I love the colours, and I think that was a very clever. You know, you were obviously well ahead of your time by coming up with that way of actually having the flat pack with the colours, with the simple writing, because as we all know, people don't read very much, which is why our programs have been very successful, because we actually facilitate and take people through a journey and do a lot more actions and hands-on, which I think is a way to motivate people and move people. But you know, as a young person, when I was growing up with my family's plastic recycling business, I of course knew and saw already at an early age there's lots of wonderful things about plastic. You know, it's flexible, it's durable, it's light, and of course it's affordable, but it's also indestructible. And unfortunately, that last attribute about plastic is what's become the biggest threat to where we are today and why it's so closely on par and aligned with climate change and where we are. So, and with us offering that business program, which is what we wanted to try and do with EPIC to fast track sort of a paradigm shift that we really think is so urgently needed to, you know, to help people really get it into their brain that they've got to make changes now, not 30 years ago, which is when I was already seeing it. Because unfortunately, as you said, you know, habits don't change overnight. So you've mentioned those changes that have happened, you know, with what you've seen over your career. And again, going back to what today's focus is, which is about, you know, rebooting and, you know, instead of responding, maybe recalibrating. Maybe we're recalibrating our love affair with plastic. What do you think is the most important thing that a business can do right now to reduce their reliance on plastic and reduce their footprint on the environment? Like if there was just one thing, only one thing that you... Well,
first, dare I say this, I was going to say, start finding people to develop your culture around this kind of thinking and feeling so that it becomes a natural part of being. But packaging, as you brought that up, is certainly the easiest. You know, let's think about that. But so much, I mean, I had a friend called George, who went and bought a coffee, and unfortunately during COVID we couldn't bring our reusable cups, so we got our normal cup, and I looked horrified. I shouldn't have, but he got the plastic lid on it, and I went, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, you know, that's normal." And I went, "Yeah, but do you know that you don't need it?" He said, "Oh, but it can be recycled." I said, "Oh, but you realise something? It didn't need to be manufactured in the first place. Why recycle something that had to use so much energy?" So hadn't thought of it. So it's kind of remembering and being curious and just say, I've got a big question in my head before I buy something that is perhaps plastic. It got to a funny point where the cup he was about to put into the recycling bin as well as the lid at the end. And then, no, the cup actually goes into landfill, unfortunately, because it's contaminated. So it's all these little things. But I think when you think a little bit and ask questions, things start to happen. And it's a cultural thing where everyone can get together and really talk about and collaborate and want it. I talk about desire because the doing happens when you understand it strongly enough and want to do it. But packaging is a great start. Say no to too much packaging. Just say no. You don't need more than you need, right?
Exactly. Yeah. On that note, there was something else I wanted to ask you, because it's all about another big part of what you do in your business, which is very innovative, and it helps reduce packaging enormously, and it also helps reduce toxicity, which is going into the water, which is what I think it's Trisano, your actual the water soluble product.
Oh, I know where you're coming from.
For your cleaning. And I think that our audience would be really interested to hear about that, because to me, that's, it's not just plastic is obviously a chemical product, the way it's being produced, but all the chemicals that are used for the detergents and everything that are used with cleaning, that all goes into our waterways as well. And we're concerned just as much about that as well as the actual visible plastic pieces. So I wondered if you could just share a little bit about that, because it's a really interesting story.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So we have a system that actually converts water through electrolysis process into a sanitizer. There's no toxicity. And that's good for the cleaners themselves. It's good for the air pollution in the office, so it doesn't wave through the air conditioning. And of course, when you put it through the waterways, it has zero impact in terms of harming. And if you want to think about no harm, that's a great concept. So yeah, thanks for asking. I think it's wonderful, and more and
that of course reduces a huge amount of packaging, because you don't have to have containers with their cleaning detergents and all that being brought, that they bring when they're doing their cleaning, because and those containers often are made of plastic, which then get thrown away. So what you're doing is pretty amazing in that respect. You've really thought about, the supply chain and how to close the loop on that, which I think is really terrific.
Thank you.
So now I have another question, probably a little bit want to go into where we need to touch on some of those sticky things. As you know, there's lots of noise in the industry, with government and government industry. They're all, there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of talk about what society should be doing to ensure, we can get that systemic change. Ranging from, mandating policy and legislation, implementation to improve what we're actually doing with circular economy and efficiencies, etc. And as well as, from overseas, there's some great work that's being done on the extended producer responsibility for the end of life of product. So I guess I'm going to go back to your magic wand, the, one thing. If you had a magic wand, what would be the one action that you think you could do different to, like you talked about what people could do about changing their habits before, but if there was something we could do across the industry and government that could really ensure we could get positive change to happen with the wave of your wand, again, I'm asking you sort of that, crystal ball type of thing, what would you say?
Wow. It's a big one, because, the first thing that comes to my well, the first thing that comes to my head is reduce your load in everything. Yeah. Do I need to jump into the car and drive whatever it is? No, reduce your load. Maybe you drive less. Maybe you get on your bicycle. Whatever it might be. Every time you just think about the next thing you're about to do and its consequences. Was it really necessary? Can I reduce my load? You reduce your load, it's perfect. It's like eating too much, isn't it? Some people eat to be full. Some people overeat after they're full. Look, I don't know why, but I'm fortunate enough. I actually don't eat to get full, so I don't actually finish my plate. But imagine you sort of less food on the plate, less everything, in terms of that, less load.
Well, look, I think, John, that's that's a philosophy and a way of getting people to really think about what they're doing on a daily basis. But I guess I just wanted to explore a little bit more with you about, you know, what you think we could do, because obviously you're working with a lot of businesses and industry with what you're doing when you're going out and the face-to-face with contact with companies. And there's a lot of legislation out there, and there's a lot of talk about making change and mandating policy and what the government can do, and then, you know, from the top down. And we do a lot from the bottom up and the top down as well. And I just, you know, I wonder what is it going to take to actually mobilize and move us where we really need to go. I mean, I've been banging on about this for over 30 years. And it's still it's like an elephant. It moves really slowly unless there's this big fright that comes behind it, and then it goes like, you know, goes like the thunder. So I just wonder, and I know this is an open conversation. It might be a good place for us to hand over to Morgan because I know we've got a few questions in our audience. But I think it's something that, you know, if you had the golden bullet or the magic wand to wave the wish, I think we'd all be much better off for it. So I wanted to sort of
Thank you. Well, I suppose, you know, everyone could use Planet Earth Cleaning Company for starters, and then they already start becoming greener, and then they can use little bin boxes, which means all the waste that they need in a day so that they don't overdo it. It's starting, you know, building your green team so everyone keeps questioning together and collaborating and getting onto purpose. Why do we do this? Healthy planet, healthy people. I mean, if the planet's healthy, we're all good, right? Unfortunately, the planet's a bit disabled, so it's time that we all begin to enable it. So together we can do that. And so it's not just the conversations. You have the conversations in order to take the actions. And you might even start saying, look, what are the 3 things we can do this month that'll make a difference?
Yeah, for sure.
You know? Or one thing.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I
mean, who needs vending machines in their businesses? For a packet of chips that came all the way from the farm, that eventually got cooked. I mean, it was cultivated, and then it eventually got cooked and chopped up and whatever, and then packaged in those wonderful packages that probably stay in landfill for 1,000 years to go into cartons to get transported to either end up in the supermarket or end up in a vending machine that takes, what, 30 seconds to eat?
Yeah. No, it's pretty ridiculous for sure. And and that's also one of the reasons why we try and give people lots of alternatives that they can choose from with our EPIC program, with our plastic swap app, that they can actually choose different things, and that's all part of that. So I'm going to go over to Morgan because I know that we've got some questions, and hand it over to the group.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ricki. Well, we've got a really great question that's coming from Jared for you, John, and Ricki as well. So is there a concern that a transition from single-use plastic will threaten Australian jobs? We hear it quite a bit as a defence to why plastics are so important. And to continue that question, if so, what can be done to ensure a just and fair transition for all Australians? So I'll pass it over to you, John, firstly.
Okay. Look, that's a really interesting question. I think with all the technologies and progress that we're going through, there are new exciting jobs that we can move into. Let's face it, the new renewable industry is offering so much potential in terms of jobs. You're not losing a job, you're actually stepping up and becoming part of the change. I think that's something to be excited about. So no, I think the transition doesn't need to exist. You just move straight in.
So I think with that, I'd probably just like to add, I think we definitely are looking at ways of creating more, you know, new jobs, new products, alternatives, as you said, just to back that up, John. And I think it's all about people, as you said, looking at the way they do things and repurposing. So I think we're not going to lose jobs. We're going to be able to create a lot more jobs by even using every single piece of plastic that's ever been made is still with us today. So there's a huge amount, there's masses of work for hundreds of thousands of people across the planet, or millions of people across the planet, to actually work on trying to eradicate and get rid of what we've created.
Absolutely. I mean, look, let's face it, you know, and like you said, if it's repurposing, it means that the old plastic becomes a resource so that we can have a life cycle that continues the whole route. So it's probably a good thing. Yeah. there's opportunities, there's jobs.
Perfect. Now, I saw some people raise their hands. If you would like to ask your question live, feel free to raise your hand and I will allow yourself to be unmuted to ask that question. So anyone that had their hand up, here we go. Alison, perfect. So I've just allowed you to unmute yourself and feel free to ask your question when you're ready. Just having a bit of an issue with that one. So we might just go to another question. Now, it's more of a statement. Dan's just said about pointing out to people when they use unnecessary plastic. Now, obviously with COVID and the lockdowns across Victoria and Australia and even the world, it's really taken a step back on all the hard work that different organisations such as Plastic Oceans Australasia and other ones. What's your, John and Ricki, what's something that you would recommend that people should do when they're with people who maybe don't understand the impact of plastics? What's something that each of us can do when we're around people who are using unnecessary plastic?
Ricki, did you want to say anything or did you want me to?
Happy for you to go first, but I've got plenty to say on that.
I mean, it's in our world, we think that everyone knows the answers of the fact that about 80% of the waste that comes from land ends up in the ocean. And it's pretty toxic. And there's a lot of chemicals that derive out of these plastics and the small little particles. And so from our world, we think, oh, we know this. But in actual fact, it's an important conversation to be had. Otherwise, when I talk to people, say, do you realise, you might be, you buy your fish, you might be actually having a cocktail of fish and plastic. It's not really nice, but there's all sorts of aspects that go with this. We're seeing a huge amount of fish life just dying. Creatures in the oceans going. We've seen the birds and the pelicans and the seagulls full of plastic, and on it goes, and the tortoises, and it's just horrific. And then there's the Great Garbage Patch, which is an island that goes for, I don't know, it's ridiculous. 1.5, I don't know, what is it, 1.5?
Size of Texas.
Yeah, the size of Texas. How ridiculous is that? You can't actually see it when you're flying over or in it because it's such small particles. So it's really doing a lot of harm without us even knowing it. So starting to understand what the impacts of plastic is, it's a big issue. It's a big issue, yeah. And it takes a lot of emissions to produce plastic too, and it's petroleum and so forth. And yeah, what do you think, Ricki?
Oh, look, the conversation with people. I think the question, going back to the question, Morgan, how to have that conversation with people when they're using plastic and what to say. One of the things that I've always found is that people don't like to feel like there's a spotlight on them. So if there's a way that we can, and we do that a lot through behaviour change and talking to people about just little small steps, and every single day, what drives me and has always driven me is if I can get just one person every day to do one thing differently, and realise that their little piece that they've done, whether it is just taking their cloth bag to the supermarket or their keep cup or their metal straw, or not even taking that product at all, when they go to the supermarket, not choosing to buy carrots in a plastic bag but buy the loose carrots. If everybody every day just did one little thing, I always say to people, it matters and it makes a difference, because a lot of people say to me, oh, that's someone else's problem. Oh, it's too late. There's nothing else we can do. And I just always go back to the basics. If we all had that attitude, we're doomed. We've got to all just do something. And some of us are in a different situation where we can do more and we want to do more, and we're quite happy to go outside of the comfort zone. But it's changing our habits. We like to have flexibility, affordability. We like things to be quick. Everyone's in a hurry. And to change over to not use that plastic item, if they're using that plastic, they have to really, really consciously want to not do it. So I guess that would be, when I'm talking to people, I just say, look, if there's only one thing that you think you could do, that would be amazing. So that would be my answer.
Do you think the vision of knowing, like even, the World Wildlife Foundation, they reckon by 2030 that there'll be something like 300 million tonnes of plastic in our oceans? I mean, just that sounds unbelievable. We're just destroying what's going on in there and just adding more and more pain and a curse to our oceans, etc., etc. So knowing that can also mean something. But I agree with you. It's what kind of choices you make when you're at the supermarket and go to the sushi shop and don't get the sushi fish with the soy in it and stuff like that. You know, really, they're things that they're easy.
Yeah, perfect. And as well, this next question is moving away from the actions of individuals and the actions of businesses. So Renee has asked, businesses are cost adverse and produce products based on cost rather than environment. How can we best frame the argument to procure more eco-friendly products? So there's examples including bamboo toilet paper, tissues, cleaning sprays, etc., when the people in charge of purchasing are not keen on having this conversation. So John, I'll throw it to you first.
It's all about stories. Create a beautiful story and people will buy into it. And it is about our future and having a vision. And when you share that with people, you know, talk about, you know, the blue sky and the clean water in our oceans and we can breathe well and so forth. The opposite's not so good. And we can, every bit that we do contributes either one way or the other, cause and effect, obviously, you know. Look, the thing is, it's very easy to speak to the converted. Try speaking to the ones that are struggling with all of this. And I agree with you. And money is an issue, you know, because they're employed on the basis of a cost effect. You know, what are the bean counters going to think? But I think the cultural thinking is changing a lot. And there is a lot of value on the cost on the planet as opposed to just the cost on a company. There's got to be that balance, yeah? Don't have to overcharge. I don't think anything we do overcharge. The EcoBins are like the cheapest on the market. It's ridiculous because we want it to be affordable. I'm not just trying to sell the idea, it's a reality. It doesn't need to be more expensive because it's green always. In fact, there's so many arguments about how it, in fact, can be much more cost effective overall. I've said about the planet, cost on planet, but in fact, there's some very, very good advantages. Just chat, you know, to the suppliers and try and be helped by it. You know, that's my thoughts.
And over to you, Ricki.
Yeah, it's a really interesting. We do a whole big piece of work with businesses about that whole section in procurement because we know that it's a real challenge for the businesses when the procurement people don't actually even want to talk about it. They don't want to know, don't change my system. I've been doing this for X number of years. I've got the suppliers that we work with. We've got the prices. They're good. They do, you know, everything's, you know, honky-dory. Don't rock the boat kind of thing. And we created a way that the procurement people can actually see the cost benefit by a cost benefit analysis of choosing one product over an alternate product, where they can actually see over a period of time the amortization of when it actually becomes, like you were saying, that it becomes a benefit and the cost is neutral, and then they're actually saving money by changing over to those other products. So it's a lot of our work is internal, working with all the different departments and helping people to actually understand that everybody contributes in a different way. And the power of the purchaser at every company is unfathomable. They don't realise how much power they've got. And they're the ones that make those choices that make a big difference further down the line. And I'm sure, as you said, John, that, you know, you see that all the time as well. It's all about the stories. So we create that story with what we do with our education program as well. So I think it's really opening people's eyes and understanding, again, going back to with individual things, where everybody in the business, they're all part of it, and every single action they do makes a difference. And there are products that we can't yet find alternatives, but you can still minimise the use of those. Sorry, John, over to you.
No. I think purpose is a very strong part of it. So do you love your purpose or do you love your job? Or is your job and your purpose combined? And that's a good thing. So that, and also if you want to talk about viability, you want to attract good, talented people. They're looking for organisations with purpose. Now, that's got to make you even stronger and more viable, doesn't it, when you've got the right people? And then the people that work within your organisation that have talent, you don't want them to go. Let them love your purpose. Move it together. Come to work because there's a reason for being, you know. So I think that's a big driver.
Absolutely. So on to the next question, which combines both of those questions together a little bit. And it's from Dan, who's asked, how can we enable consumers to make informed decisions about what they select off the supermarket's shelf or as part of their corporate consumer chain? So we've talked about the individuals about making informed decisions as well as those corporate consumers. So John, I'll throw it over to you first. How can we enable people to make better informed decisions?
Yeah, so I often talk about responsible consumption, and it's one of the UN goals. So it's actually crucial to really feel that. So what can you do as a big organisation to have, you're large, but with a small footprint. And so when you have a thinking about that, that might just be in your consciousness, but some organisations may even put together a policy. I don't like the word policy, but something that just every day people can think about what needs to be thought about before you buy something. So that here's your emissions. Where are you getting your electricity from? Is it fossil fuel? Is it green power? Is it there's a whole lot of factors. So it becomes part of your purchasing criteria. You can do that. You can start off with that. Put together a list as a team. So what else can you think of, Joe? Karen, have you got any ideas? And then together you come up with some kind of formula that every time you buy, it becomes part of the concept. I know that a lot of organisations have chosen Planet Earth that's the reason. And not only just because we happen to be greener, we've been doing it for so long, there's a level of authenticity rather than compliance. And that's much nicer. And then it just brings the whole thing together. So you're looking for authentic companies that will bring to you the right kind of purchasing opportunities that matter on an overall, planetary level, as well as for your organisation. It needs to be good for the organisation, but bringing it together. Yeah. Does that make sense? Hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ricki, your chance to respond to how do we enable consumers, both the individuals and the businesses, to make better informed decisions?
Yeah, so I'm going to add another area to that question, another layer to that question. To me, I feel that it's all about the data and the research and backing everything up with facts. And a lot of people like to have the facts that underline why we're asking them to make those decisions. So I'll give you an example. Quite a few years ago, when Aldi first started in Australia, and they've been here a long time now, they were considered the cheap knockoff sort of supermarket that you go to because they had products that were maybe weren't just mass produced, not a lot of thought process, a lot came from China, etc. They've actually, if you follow the story of Aldi, it's really, really interesting because they've actually set up a number of their supermarkets now have actually gone green in every sense. They've got solar power, they've got their behind the scenes is what they're doing with their water consumption, with their packaging. They've got an enormous range of products, both front of house and back of house, that they've obviously taken on their whole journey of becoming sustainable, which I know is not one of your favourite words, John, but it is one of the words that they use about a sustainable business. And they've backed it up with the science and the research. And I think people to make an informed decision, I think it's a combination of definitely what you said in the beginning, John, but also the other end, there's people that want to have it verified with facts. And I think the more articles and the more information that comes out through the media and through reports and research projects that are done, the more we can inform people that this is not just made up, it's all verified. We're not actually telling stories. This is a real fact of why, when you make that choice, this is the difference. This is how much you're reducing. This is what you're doing that's better.
Absolutely. And John, I might just give you a second. Sustainability. So for you, what does that word mean?
Oh no.
Respond to what Ricki was just saying there for our audience.
Why did you do that to me, Ricki?
It's a word like green. Years ago, when everyone said, "Oh, let's go green," we all got sick of the word green. And as I said to you, we call it grey wash. Everything with plastic is grey wash. It's not green wash. And it's a bit like the word sustainability. Everybody thinks of it as a different thing. We all have a different assumption of it. So I know that you do as well.
Well, it's only because I don't like the word sustain. Sustain seems so you know, it's ordinary. It doesn't motivate. It's not an adjective. It doesn't move you. I think, you know, if we want to get people going, we need the idea of something that propels us. And when I mentioned earlier about the planet being disabled, then the opposite to disabled is enabled. And I really wish the word enableability wouldn't provide a speech impediment, but it would almost be better to be into enableability than into sustainability and get moving, because it means for me a lot. So if anyone can coin a word out there, I'd be really happy, because I think we need to move from sustain. It just seems so, it's just in the let's sustain. It's ordinary. And it can be also misunderstood with financial sustainability too. So many other aspects. I don't know. I think there's got to be a better word. Yeah.
How about non-greyability?
Non-greyability.
Maybe we need to workshop it.
We need to workshop it. Absolutely. That's another webinar.
There we go.
Well, I might just jump back over to Alison. I've allowed Alison the chance to unmute themselves. So if they just click the microphone and start speaking when they're ready to ask their question. Go ahead, Alison.
Hi, am I with you now, Morgan?
Yes, that's perfect.
Thank you. Sorry about that before. Thanks, everyone, especially John and Ricki. It's a real pleasure to be part of this webinar today. I'm really glad I joined. I want to add further weight to that conversation regarding retailers and how that they can obviously procure product and packaging that is sustainable. I hate to use that word too, John, sustainable, but friendly, and sort of limit their packaging. And I feel like a lot of my clients talk about practice in energy saving, water saving, and where the barrier really comes down is in that packaging argument. And I think it's the misunderstanding. And Ricki, it's great to hear that people out there educating that about how to procure those packaging, but I think that's misunderstood, and I think that the conversations around that are just not happening. And I think that's where we can really affect some change into having some policy and some actual some instructions, and be a hub that can inform these guys about how to have packaging. And I don't know, I haven't got the answers to that, but it's been something that's been on my agenda for some time, because as you know, I go to my retail operation like my sushi operator and refuse their soy sauce, but the customers behind me don't. And I've tried to advise them on, you know, you should be having this soy sauce not in this individual packaging, but they just don't see the benefits and that cost benefit analysis. They just don't understand that. And I think that's a really powerful direction that we can be taking. And I'm not sure what the answer is, and maybe that is another workshop, but I think getting that word out there to those bigger players about how to do that, and Aldi is a great example of that. But you know, how does that work then for SMEs who obviously just see the cost? So I don't know. I'm probably posing a lot of questions here, but I would love to have sort of a guide, or a step 2 how-to guide for both shopping centres, councils, for retailers, and how to actually do that and administer that. So
can I jump in there? So Alison, thank you so much for coming on. I don't know which area of business you're in, but certainly both John and I could definitely help you with that. And with our EPIC program, we've got a lot of information there that does give step-by-step guide on how SMEs and businesses of any level can actually do something. And I think it's really also a poignant opportunity you talked quite a bit about the fish soy sauce bottles. So we've actually got a campaign. There's a petition online with one of our school representatives, a lovely young lady called Scarlett Rosshandler, who's been petitioning to ban the soy sauce production of the little fish bottles. So people can individually go on and actually sign that petition. And when we've got over 100,000, you talked about policy, we actually want to go to the Melbourne City Council and talk to them about actually banning fish soy sauce bottles in that area, so we can actually get retailers to maybe start to look at that. And that could be an example of how we could motivate and empower people in an area as a case study to say, okay, the city of Melbourne has said to all the sushi or Japanese food outlets to actually ban using those and give them an alternative. Give them an alternative. Don't just say you can't do that, but say this is an alternative. Go back to the old days that you just have the soy sauce bottle there that they squirt as they're there and they go away and they can only take it in a brown paper bag. No plastic, no rubber bands, no fake green grass. In all of that, everything is just natural, and that could be a case study, and that's a way to actually demonstrate how then policy can change. So that was just my response to what you said, Alison. So thank you for that.
I could add two things, actually. One of the important things, not only is it just the fish soy, in any takeaway container place, you could actually bring your own glass dish. I do that. So you have your glass dish, you bring it in, you've got your top, you put it on, they put the sushi rolls inside, easy stuff. When I go down the street to get a sandwich, I bring a plate, they put the roll on the plate. There's so many things we can do without even adding to this problem, so that it becomes a conversation. Isn't that cheaper? And maybe the Japanese store can say, hey, we'll give you 50 cents off. I know that one of our clients, I'll actually mention McConnell Dow, I came in to give a talk to all their staff, and as part of it, they gave everyone a reusable cup. And if they went to the cafe downstairs, they gave all the staff $1 off their coffee. So there's ways of really making it a financial gain too, you know.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you so
Thanks,
much
Alison.
for the question, Alison. That was fantastic. Now, we're almost at the end of today, so I might combine the last two questions together to ask one big one for both John and Ricki. These questions come from Josephine and Jocelyn. Now, if you could describe a healthier and more eco-friendly world, given that it's almost impossible to remove every single piece of microplastic from our ocean, what do you think our best outcome would be in the next 5 years? And would there be ways to move towards refilling on a larger scale? So I think part of that question is saying, you know, we're talking about the soy sauce instead of those little ones, something big, and having that as part of everyday life and every action, that those small bits of plastic occur so regularly. So I'll pass it over to John first, just for that last big question for today.
So we're talking about replacing plastic, are we?
Well, over the next 5 years, what's the best result? And could having larger scale plastic refilling system be an answer?
Yeah, it could be. Look, I think first of all, we have to do more recycling for any of the old plastic, the virgin plastic. So we're not seeing enough of that for starters, right? So that could happen. So there's a resource that isn't really being fully used. I know with our EcoBins, a lot of consciousness went into what's called a life cycle analysis, so that we thought about when you manufacture a bin, just because it's through recycling sorting, it could actually be made of the right kind of materials rather than solid hard plastic that might actually take you 3 or 4 years to offset the throwaway of your actual plastics, particulars. So if you could start off being sustainable, that would make sense. So it's the consciousness is really important. Can we move away? I actually asked myself, can we move away from plastic completely? So that's, I think, the vision, and perhaps the vision should be no more plastic, but it's a big ask. But I like the idea. And what else would it be to replace it? I'm actually looking at product that actually looked like plastic isn't. We've seen the manufacturing of mushrooms, I believe, and other alternatives that can actually turn into the same kind of flexibility. So I think we're going to see a lot of technological changes. And how do we move to a world that's more that we can enable our planet? So that it's more vibrant and more abundant, because let's face it, the planet gives us so much when we help it rebuild its own resources. So we're kind of not smart if we don't allow that to happen. I know we're all smart, but there's a point where we need to ask questions, right? So, you know, we can't all live in mud brick homes and live in the country and have no electricity and all of that. I get that. But there is now architects looking at ways of actually buildings that give more than they take. So I think there's just investigate it. Google University will tell you a lot. There's plenty going on, I'm telling you. And smaller houses, tiny houses, that's a big, you know, revolution right now, which means less energy in the home. So on it goes. So and being conscious, like for example, we're looking for a new office. I don't want it to have north-facing windows. South-facing windows gives you light without the heat of the sun. Yeah, so it's keep asking questions, and I think we can move towards enablement, if I like to call it that, so that and so just being conscious of the choices you make. I think we're all going to do that. When 27 years ago, they thought I was a bit of a lunatic talking about being green. Well, actually not environmentally friendly, because green didn't exist. It was just a colour, as I said earlier. But I think the point here is, and I find that funny when I think back, is all they wanted, just give me a good clean. Yeah, that kind of changed a lot. So people are talking. So I don't know, materials you choose. Materials are getting better, even in building, or maybe having an older building and redoing it a little bit if you want to make it more comfortable, rather than rebuilding or creating a new building, you know, and stuff like that. So that's the world I see, is that we just have to be more conscious of the choices we make, and that will change everything. Yeah. And corporations need to respond to our demands, otherwise they don't get business. Yeah, so, you know,
asking questions and listening to scientists is probably something to think about for all of our guests today. And Ricki, I'd like to throw it over to you. What would be the best outcome 5 years from now that you would see, just in the last couple of minutes of the Q&A session?
Well, it would be remiss of me, and people would expect me to say the obvious, which is, having gone through this for my whole life, is stop making any more plastic. Stop producing any more plastic and use the plastic that's already been made, and that would make a big difference. I'm not talking about essential plastic like contact lenses and what we need for medical services. Obviously, there's exceptions, but I'm talking about the bulk of the plastic that is created, particularly single-use plastic. We don't need any more to be made. So in 5 years' time, if we could stop, but have that done in 5 years, that there is no more plastic being produced, that would be pretty amazing. I know that's not going to happen. Reality is it's not going to happen, but that would be the number one thing. The other thing, going back to the consumer, the big change we can make, though, is definitely through retail. And if enough people push back and stop buying products that are individually wrapped, particularly fruit and vegetables, and if everybody would just stop buying fruit and vegetables wrapped in silly little pieces of plastic, and get the supermarkets going up the line to the heads of the corporations that make those decisions, to the farmers about how it's packed. If we could just get that one example happening in the next couple of years, and it's all like you're going to an indoor farmers market and there's no packaging with plastic, that would really start to help an eco-friendly, more well-being with our environment and what we're living with the urban environment. And there's also, lastly, because John talked quite a bit about housing, the actual developers and the architects and the construction industry, they also, in conjunction with the retail, could have a huge impact within 5 years with what we live in and how we consume it.
Ricki, can I ask you, do you think the supermarket should stop asking us if we'd like to buy a plastic bag?
Oh, John, of course. Like, I don't even know why they have it there. It's ridiculous.
I know, it was rhetorical, but, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, my thoughts and if I had to, create a quote, I'd say, look, in the 1950s, plastics was a miracle. It really was. But today, it's a curse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the perfect thing to end our Q&A. Thank you so much, everyone, for being involved. And Ricki, I'll throw it over to you for the signing out.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Great way just to end. Really, really good to hear your thoughts, John. And obviously, we're on the same page with quite a few things. No surprises there. So I want to thank everybody for attending, and I hope that that we've all learned something else today, and that you're a little bit more inspired about what we've been talking about, and hopefully you'll get some takeaways from us today to make things and do things differently. If today's session really did inspire you and you really enjoyed what you heard, our next webinar is actually on, I'll take this little opportunity to do a little plug, March 8th, which is actually to recognise International Women's Day. And I am featuring Jo Ruxton, our inspirational founder for Plastic Oceans globally. So Jo and I are going to have an in-depth conversation on a global focus. So if any of you are interested, that will be available on our website and links. The webinar today, as we talked about earlier, is actually available, and you'll be able to download it and get that link from Morgan, who will send it through to you. On behalf of Planet Earth Cleaning Company, EcoBins and Plastic Oceans Australasia, I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and please follow us all on our socials page. And if you have any questions that we missed, please still send them through, and we will try and get back to you on those by the chat box. So thanks everyone. Hope you have a great day, and enjoy. For those in Melbourne, enjoy going back to work tomorrow and being able to go out tonight after midnight. And John, talk to you later. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Yeah. Thanks, Ricki. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.